Okay, let's try and finish this. Okay, here we go. Magdalena smiting the traitor. This should be part 6, at least to finish what had happened. The discovery of several intruders at the Royal Academy had prompted Robert, the Sovereign Knight Commander, to send a fresh set of orders by ordinance. He advised that the palace be sealed and that nobody be allowed to approach the Academy, and the Zent made it so. The palace had already been sealed once before, so everyone acted quickly and efficiently. Movement between it and the Royal Academy ceased, and duchies lost the privilege of contacting the palace directly. Henceforth, all communication would first be filtered through the villas. Alfreda, send word to the scholars and attendants in the palace, King Tralqual instructed. Clementia, direct the knights. Magdalena, contact the villas. Be sure to warn Sigiswald to strengthen his guard. His villa is nearest to Arensbach. Understood. As Zent's wives, we moved at once in response to his orders. Lady Ralfreda would contact the palace as the first wife, while Lady Clementia would oversee the knights as a second. My duty as a third wife was to send word to the various villas. I would tell them of the intruders discovered at the Royal Academy, that the palace had once again been sealed, and that they should remain vigilant, and that Lady Clementia was going to direct the knights. Hold on. Let me just make sure I did that right. Okay, yeah. King Tralqual, Lady Clementia said, taking a somewhat feeble tone. Once the knights have gathered, I shall take them with me to my villa. As the knights returning to the palace from the Royal Academy will need to pass through my villa, its teleportation door cannot be sealed. May I station more guards there? She gazed at King Tralqual with aqua blue eyes. In the aftermath of the Civil War, when many had refused to accept him as the Zent, her villa had come under attack. Her daughter had died in the violence, and she had come to fear brutish men who spoke and acted roughly. It stood to reason that she was so concerned her villa had the fewest male knights of them all, and rarely saw much traffic. The remaining knights would not have access to her living area, but that was hardly a comfort. Lady Clementia's delicate light green hair was loosely tied, and she looked as frail as she sounded. I was told she had never once held a weapon outside her Royal Academy classes. As a woman of Dunkelfelger, I thought she should learn to protect herself, not that I would actually say such a thing. You may, King Tralqual replied. I shall send 2 of my guard knights with you, and trust the management of your villa to them. I thank you. I couldn't help but furrow my brow. It made sense to send experienced knights to Lady Clementia's villa, which would serve as an important supply line going forward, but 2 of the Zent's own guard knights. King Tralqual would be far too vulnerable. Perhaps I could move knights from my villa to the palace. After watching Lady Clementia leave with 2 of the Zent's guards, I considered which of his knights remained and the security of my villa. Aside from requesting more knights, there was plenty one could do to bolster one's defenses. Laying traps and relocating one's bedroom were among the most obvious examples. Moreover, unlike Lady Clementia, I could depend on my own martial might. If our king was lacking knights, then perhaps I would guard him myself. Lady Ralfreda sighed. To think Ehrenfest's warning was correct. She shook her head a few times, causing her golden tresses to sway. The palace had previously been sealed in response to a message from Prince Sigiswald, who had met with Ob Ehrenfest in the king's stead and relayed the Archduke's warning that an invasion was coming. The Sovereign Order had spent 3 days at the Royal Academy awaiting an attack, but they had seen neither hide nor hair of any intruders. The Sovereign Temple had sent 3 distinct requests from the Royal Academy to be reopened for their ceremonies, and when consulted through the villas, Ehrenfest said nothing in response. The absence of a threat had made it hard to justify keeping the royal palace sealed, so King Tralqual sent Roblet and Prince Anastasius to search the Royal Academy. They had reported nothing of note, so the decision was made to reopen the palace. And that was when our invaders had struck. Their timing seemed more than a mere coincidence. I wondered, Lady Ralfreda continued, where were these intruders hiding when they were not discovered during the search? Or that they were not discovered during the search. Her blue eyes turned to me. Do you have any ideas, Lady Magdalena? I thought back to the report Robert and Prince Anastasius had given and went through the buildings on the Academy's grounds. As I understand it, they searched everywhere with connections to Arensbach, their dormitory, their tea party room, and even old Workstock's dormitory. The dorms and tea party rooms of the other abolished duchies were searched as well. There are other villas dotting the grounds, but they were sealed at the hands of past Zents and cannot be reopened without the Grutterscheid. Though nowhere else comes to mind, The facts speak for themselves. There are hostiles lurking somewhere in the academy. What in the world are Roblet and the others doing? Lady Ralfrida seethed. How have these intruders not been captured when we have guards stationed all over? Because the guards are on the enemy side. Duh. Of course, they obviously don't know this, but... She had put Roblet forward for the position of Knight Commander, so incidents like this made her more frustrated than most. Still, as we had merely taken shelter in our villas, we could not criticize their lack of results. Our foes must be convinced we will not find them. They will not have had the arrogance to invade the Royal Academy otherwise. Perhaps it was because Roblet and the others were on high alert that they were discovered at all. In any case, now that we know about them, we are in a state of war. We will need to ready ourselves and plan ahead. Goodness, but once the royal palace is sealed, the villas will serve as the only way inside. Should we not move our focus from the palace to those entrances? My chest tightened and a strange sense of unease began to take root. I could not ascertain the reason. It was like we were missing something crucial, or the information we had access to was being manipulated, or some grand scheme was proceeding beyond our reach. Indeed, I said, the villas will need to be guarded, but only as a means to an end. The Zent is our main focus, so we should assign him more knights than anywhere else. I will check on my villa and then return to the palace to protect him. You, Lady Magdalena? Once the palace is sealed, our foes will not be able to access it from the Royal Academy. I see no reason for us to worry ourselves. If our foes are from Arensbach and Lonzenov, then Prince Sigiswald's villa in the southeast will need the most guards. Mine is in the southwest and should require only the bare minimum. As our most important location, the Royal Palace should receive more troops, not fewer. Know that nothing is ever certain. If the Knight Commander has his eyes on the Academy, then we must keep ours on the Zent. And if others intended to leave the Zent underprotected, I would join his guard to ensure his safety. Magdalena, there's no need to go to such lengths for me, King Troraqual said, clearly troubled. I smiled gently and shook my head. Even as a little girl, I understood that Dunkelfelger was a Zent's sword. My heart was set on defeating the foes of our divinely mandated king and protecting the peace in Jurgenschmidt. I needed to make good on my duchy's oath. If not now, then when? I am a woman of Dunkelfelger, I said. As the Knight Commander has his hands full at the Royal Academy, I wish to carry out my duty as your sword. Is it really that unusual for a wife to worry about her husband? For my own peace of mind, please allow my guard knights to protect you as well. King Troraqual sighed, exasperated, but gave me a kind smile nonetheless. As long as it remains within the living quarters, do as you please. I temporarily returned to my villa, rearranged the knights stationed there, instructed them on how to contact me, rest, and respond to various emergencies, then went back to the royal palace with my knights. Our first course of action was to quickly comb the Zent's living quarters. It was well protected, isolated through the use of mana, and accessible only to those with the correct authority. But that was no excuse for the poor security I witnessed upon my arrival. The guard was so lax that it actually made my head spin. I addressed those with me. King Troraqual will be most vulnerable when he is asleep. Let us begin by revising the security here, if nowhere else. First, we shall add my knights to the night watch. Then we may lay detection traps. Nobody should enter or leave his quarters except those guarding it. I would also advise you to move the king's bed to that side room. Our aim is to deceive the enemy. Should you not sleep alongside the Zent to further secure his person? One of the guards asked me. Though I would not mind that, my being there would make King Troraqual too anxious to sleep. Indeed, it was hard to believe he would get much rest with a fully armored woman beside him, ready to fight at a moment's notice. Yeah, I agree on that one. Some smiled at me and said I was being too cautious, but I disagreed. I took a brisk nap and prepared to act in the dead of night if necessary. I would contact my elder brother as well, but King Troraqual is not yet facing any immediate danger. My brother Ob Dunkelfelger also served as a Zent's sword. He would come without fail if the king was in danger. Ehrenfest had already spoken with him, and I had said that I would request his aid if anything happened, so he must have been ready to join us. I spent the night on guard, but we encountered not a single hostile. Roblet sent no word of the invaders having been captured, so the scholars debated over whether to unseal the palace or keep waiting. They had not reached a conclusion by the time night fell again. Nothing happened last night, King Troraqual reminded me. Must you continue to push yourself? My love, our enemies will act precisely when we lower our guard. We saw as much when we last unsealed the palace, did we not? Last night might have been uneventful, but that does not mean tonight will be the same. Got a point. King Troraqual seemed melancholic as he watched me rearm traps and Restation the night watch, still partially armored. I worry about your health. Is it also Dunkelfelger's way to remain so guarded at night that no one can get any rest? Indeed, for we are in a state of war. Pay no mind to me, dear, and get some sleep in the side room, and we hope to catch our foes off guard, remember? So you must not tell anyone but the knights here now where our traps are set or where you are staying. Despite the king's concerns, such precautions were entirely necessary. Returning to my villa would only add to my stresses. I would feel so restless about his inadequate guard that I would not be able to sleep. Fine, fine, King Trollqual replied with a shrug, if you insist. He must have realized that I would not relent because he relocated to the side room. As I watched the Zent leave, I reaffirmed my resolve to protect him no matter the cost. Then I turned to the night watch and said, perhaps I should join you all tonight. If you stand guard, Lady Magdalena, the enemy will notice the change, one of the knights retorted, chastising me slightly. Please stay in bed, even if you do not sleep. I went into the Zent's usual chambers to lie down, but I was only half asleep. My knights had refused to leave the bed curtain open even when I expressed my desire to listen to what was happening outside and what was being said. Even as I rested, I was ready for battle. My hair was braided so that I could quickly wrap it up and secure it with a single hand, and my clothes were suitable to be worn outside. On my belt were offensive magic tools and a face stone that would grant me full plate armor. I closed my eyes. Much like King Trollqual and the others, I did not expect there to be an attack tonight. Any incidents of note would occur at the Royal Academy, and there was no risk of our foes slipping into the palace. Still, I remained on guard. It was better to be safe than sorry. Agreed. Especially when you're talking about the king here. This is why Dunkelfelder women rarely ever fit in or adapt when they marry into other duchies. My thoughts became hazy as the darkness lulled me to sleep. But then I noticed the whistle of something cutting through the air. My eyes shot open, and a moment later, a man let out a surprised cry that reverberated through the hall. An intruder, I shouted to my knights as I sat bolt upright and started searching my belt. Do not let them escape. I touched the face stone that would create my armor, channel mana into it, and then leaped out of bed before the armor had even fully formed. By the time I reached the hall, my staff in hand, the night watch had already caught the intruder. I'm not an enemy, the man shouted. I'm one of King Trollqual's guard knights. If nothing else, the apparent intruder was wearing the standard dress of a sovereign knight. The night watch attendant lit the area to reveal the man's face. Though you may be one of the Zent's guards, I said, you were not assigned to tonight's watch. Lady Magdalena, why are you here? The captured knight exclaimed, shocked that I had just come out of the Zent's bedchamber. He probably served under Lady Clementia in her villa, or Roblet at the Royal Academy. It's gotta be Roblet. There must have been a miscommunication among the chains of command, he continued. Suspect individuals must be disarmed and imprisoned, I said. You might be using a disguising magic tool. Lady Magdalena, this man is exactly who he claims to be, one of the king's guards interjected. I can guarantee it. He and the others on night watch were against us disarming the intruder. How naive could these knights be? Our captive had attempted to trespass into a high-security area. Under no circumstances could we let him go. We were simply disarming him, and not breaking his bones to render him immobile was enough of a kindness. We can listen to his excuses later, I said. Consider this treatment a punishment for his neglect. He should have known that only those assigned to the night watch are allowed to be here. Paying no mind to the man's associates trying to smooth things over, I sent an ordinance to the knights guarding the teleportation doors to the villa. This is Magdalena. We have an intruder in the Zent's living quarters. The enemy might be disguising themselves as sovereign knights. Be on your guard. As my bird departed, more arrived with urgent messages. Intruders spotted running to the villa's teleportation doors, requesting aid. There are knights rushing to the scholar building. Be on your guard. Knew it. The guards who had just moments ago been defending the intruder now looked at him with hard eyes. I considered it unlikely that he would free him against my orders and rushed into the side room where the Zent was staying. The fuss outside had woken him. King Trollqual, the enemy have disguised themselves as sovereign knights and infiltrated the palace. I requested permission to summon Dunkelfelder the Zent's sword. Though he stayed in bed, the king nodded and said, please do. Ishide, this is Magdalena. We caught an intruder trying to enter the Zent's living quarters in the royal palace. Inform my brother Dunkelfelder and tell him to require his aid. First, I sent an ordinance to the guard knight I had entrusted with defending my villa. The royal palace has been sealed, I continued. Sent a letter to the Ob and one to the knight guarding the Dunkelfelder dormitory's teleportation circle. Correspondence sent from the palace might be interfered with. Any knights with access to Raffen, the dormitory supervisor, should contact him by ordinance. Ask him to send word to Dunkelfelder as well. Ensure that all responses go through you and then report back to me. We would contact my brother through as many avenues as we could. As I continued to send more ordinances, my knights sent some of their own. Intruders have infiltrated the royal palace. Mobilize everyone in the knight dormitory. Aid those chasing the intruders. Ralfrida, this is Charcoal, the king said. The palace has been breached. Magdalena is leading the defense and has called upon Dunkelfelger for aid. Contact the princes at once. Tell them to seal their villas and prioritize their safety. My eyes widened. I was in charge of protecting the Zent's living quarters, but this was the first I was hearing about leading the defense as a whole. You are putting me in charge of the defense, I asked? Yes, as the knight commander is absent, I trust you to lead the knights in his stead. You will apprehend our foes no matter what form they take. I knelt and said, as you wish. Then as I stood up again, one of my attendants approached with a pouch containing offensive magic tools, rejuvenation potions, and the like. I expected no less of an attendant of the sword. I gave her a grateful smile, noting that she was equipped for battle as well, then accepted the pouch and hooked it onto my belt. It was then that yet another ordinance arrived. Lady Magdalena, this is Ishite. We received a response from Lady Segunde of Dunkelfelger. She informed us that Ob Dunkelfelger is already fighting at the Royal Academy and that she is stationed in her dormitory to provide rear support. She will direct the Ob to head to the Royal Palace at once. Please unseal the entrance. Shocked though I was by the speed of the response, I was more taken aback by its contents. Who was Dunkelfelger fighting at the Royal Academy, and why had we not been informed of their presence? My thoughts turned to the man who had asked us to seal the palace to begin with, who had been at the Royal Academy ever since Ehrenfest sounded the alarm bell. Roblet. As the face of our true foe arose in my mind, I could not suppress a grimace. I turned to King Troracle and voiced my conclusion. Magdalena, how can you say such a thing? He exclaimed in response. Few lords would accept that their most trusted knight and the head of their order had betrayed them. As much as it pained me to see the king so stunned, it also reminded me to close my heart and not to err. If the sovereign knights were fighting with Dunkelfelger, do you not think they would have told us through the villa? That we were kept in the dark leads me to believe the two groups are fighting one another. Do you recall who told us to seal the Royal Palace in the first place, stopping us from communicating with the duchies? Very few people could sneak an intruder into your living quarters. King Troracle paled at a loss for words. There was no reason to drive him into a corner. My enemy was at the Royal Academy. Dunkelfelger is a Zent's sword, I said. We smite those who oppose the divine mandate and protect the peace here in Jürgenschmidt. As promised, I shall protect you no matter who your foes may be. I shall see them slaughtered. I ask only that you unseal the palace so Dunkelfelger's knights can enter. The Zent got up and went to do just that. I exited the room and sent out more ordinances. This is Magdalena. By the decree of Zent Troracle, I am leading the defense. The palace shall once again be unsealed. Let the knights of Dunkelfelger through when they arrive. This is Magdalena. The enemy was not disguised after all. A portion of the Sovereign Knight's order has started a rebellion. Our foes are Robla and those who follow him. Lady Ralfrida, this is Magdalena. Robla arranged the attack on the palace. The knights of our order are fighting among themselves. Please spread the word to each of the villas. Some of the Night Watch stared at me in shock. Mere slander, one of the knights exclaimed. The knight commander would never betray the king. Are you trying to divide us? Take it back. King Troracle, Lady Magdalena must be stopped. Silence, I snapped, then turned to my knights. Protecting the Zent is our highest priority. As we have good reason to believe Robla is a traitor, we should not trust any of the king's guards. Detain them all. I joined my knights in restraining the others. Our targets resisted and requested the aid of their fellow guards, turning the Zent's living quarters into a battleground. Protect the Zent. We must stop Lady Magdalena from doing as she pleases. We know not who is working for Robla. So none must be allowed near the king. King Troracle was likely still coming to terms with Robla's betrayal. He could not join his guard knights in stopping me, nor could he join me and order his knights to comply. He simply closed his eyes, wrought with pain, and dropped into a chair. My attendant and I fought back anyone who tried to approach King Troracle while my knights steadily detained his guards. 2 ordinances arrived amid the chaos. Zent Troracle, this is Ob Dunkelfelger. I have arrived at the palace and request your authority to start capturing sovereign knights. Magdalena, it's Wordcraft. Where are you right now? I could see that King Troracle was still torn over how to respond. Keeping him in the corner of my eye, I responded for him. Brother, this is Magdalena. I am with King Troracle. There is fighting in the Zent's living quarters. I grant Dunkelfelger's permission to capture sovereign knights. I noticed the tension leave the king's shoulders. He was relieved to have escaped making such a grave decision, but only for a moment. Then he frowned as if to chastise me for answering without his authorization. Well, you kind of weren't doing anything, dude. Relax, dear. You have entrusted me with command over this battle. It would not be wise to put this burden on the sovereign knights. They would not find it easy to fight their former allies, and we would struggle to tell friend from foe. This battle will go much quicker if we have Dunkelfelger's knights subjugate our enemies for us. Furthermore, our true foe is not in the palace, but at the Royal Academy. We would not be able to release any of our prisoners until their leader, Roblet, was dealt with. King Troracle clutched his chest and heaved a pained sigh. Another ordinance darted into the room. I expected a report from Dunkelfelger or the knights in the palace, but I was taken completely by surprise. Zent Troracle, this is Ferdinand of Ehrenfest. The bird went on to make some truly shocking announcements. Together with my brother, Ehrenfest had fought the rebels from Lanzanov and Ahrensbach hiding in the Adalja villa. They had taken prisoners, but Lanzanov's king Gervasio was not among them. He was apparently working to obtain the Grujischai, and Brala was positioned in the auditorium to protect him. That much has been going on at the Royal Academy? There was so much new intelligence that I was at a loss for words. The same went for King Trarkol. He sat motionless upon hearing that Robot really had betrayed him, and that a forwarder was about to obtain the Grujischai he had spent over a decade searching for. To conclude his message, Lord Ferdinand requested that King Trarkol march to the front line and command the knights as their Zent. King Trarkol, I said, tell Lord Ferdinand the Dunkelfelder is here to fight in your stead, and... Before I could finish, King Trarkol swung his staff with a slightly trembling hand. The yellow-faced stone he was holding turned into a bird, which then departed with a very clear message. He wanted a true Zent to take the throne. No, I cried, overcome with desperation. They will think you have abandoned your duties and authority as a Zent. Correct that at once. Still, without the Grujischai, I am the Zent in name only, he said with an unchanging expression, repeating his words to the ordnance. The last embers of our country will die without a true Zent to save them. I pray only that one will arise. 2 of his 5 bound guard knights echoed this sentiment, shouting that Jürgen Schmidt needed a true Zent and that King Trarkol to be set free from his burdens. I kind of agree he's already been put through enough in these past, 10 years? Without a Grujischai, the poor guy does need to rest, but at the same time, that is his duty as the king. And if he can find the Grujischai and have it, that should make his burden a bit easier. Maybe. I could not, maybe. King Trarkol, what are you saying? You are the Zent. The nobles of Jürgenschmidt acknowledge you as such. That is precisely why Lord Ferdinand sent his ordinance to you. He shook his head and repeated still, without the Grujischai, I am the Zent in name only. The last embers of our country will die without a true Zent to save them. I pray only that one will arise. I suddenly noticed an unusual aroma coming from King Trarkol. It was sweet like a perfume one might put in one's hair, but he had never been particularly fond of sweet scents. I sensed danger somehow. Are you wearing some manner of perfume, I asked? Or were you perhaps approached by someone with a preference for sweet smells? I recently started sleeping to a calming incense. Perhaps the smell clings to me? He responded normally that time, unlike his droning repetition mere moments ago. I drew my brows together in a frown. Something was amiss, but I could not put my finger on what. Trug. That's what the incense was. It's Trug. Lady Magdalena, is this not exactly how the knights under the influence of Trug behaved? One of the bound guards asked. They appeared normal on the surface, but he will not respond properly to certain subjects, and they exuded a sweet scent. Yep. I recalled that strange incident, and the plant theorized to have caused it, then inhaled sharply. Was it perhaps Robla who brought Trug to the Sovereign Knights Order? Robla had investigated the Trug-driven knights. Assuming he was the culprit, it must have been easy for him to give false reports. How much intelligence had he twisted or outright hidden from us? How would the country's nobles look upon King Trarkol, who had thus far been acting on false information? I will make Robla pay. First, I released the guards who had not echoed the king's strange remarks. It seems clear to me that you 3 are not under the influence of Trug. I return your freedom so that you may defend King Trarkol in his living quarters. I will unite with my brother and smite Roblat. Understood. I told one of my knights and an attendant of the sword to stay behind, then led the rest in a charge from the Zent's living quarters to the teleportation door to the Royal Academy. Brother, this is Magdalena. The Zent's living quarters have been secured. I am now heading to the Royal Academy. Leaving the safe-seeming knights to defend the Royal Palace, I rendezvoused with my brother. Together we sprinted toward the Royal Academy's auditorium. Magdalena used this, my brother said, handing me a silver dagger. It was much heavier than any stat-made weapon. Depending on how one wielded it, the weapon weight could prove detrimental in combat. Retrieved from one of the Lanzanovians, he explained. The silver cloth they wear blocks all mana attacks, and no stab weaponry works against it. Conversely, this silver dagger can easily shred through face-stone armor. Defeating foes of an entirely different culture is no easy feat. I gracefully accepted the dagger and attached it to my belt as we ran, allowing my body to adjust to the weight and find my new center of gravity. It was not long before we reached our destination. This is the auditorium, I said. Is everyone ready? Absolutely. Open the doors. Charge! My brother roared. His knights leaped upon the doors and threw them open, and we both rushed into the auditorium. Though a battle had clearly been fought, nobody was in formation. A major spell of some sort had scattered everyone, friend or foe, and stalled the fighting in the process. Our entry was met only with looks of shock, allowing me to immediately spot Roblat. Lawns, I declared, turning my staff into a spear and closing in on my target. Robla, you dared to poison King Torokal despite serving as his knight commander. For that, you will not be spared my wrath. As his wife, I will strike you down in his stead. Okay, that was what she meant. Now I know. My brother responded to Lord Ferdinand atop the altar and instructed his knights to capture the traitors among the Sovereign Order. Some of our foes were standing in a protective circle around Robla, but they dispersed somewhat when they saw our force, making it easier for me to forge a path. Before I could reach Robla, however, something strange happened. The statues of the gods gave rise to columns of light. Then there was a flash, and the 3 people atop the altar disappeared. King Gervasio, Robla cried, looking completely taken aback as he rushed to investigate. He was wearing not the black cape of a sovereign knight, but a silver cape brought from the Lanzanov. Yet another sign that he did not see King Torokal as his true lord. I thought back to the king, shaking with disbelief at Robla's betrayal. I could still see his trembling hands as, under the influence of Trug, he claimed not to be a true Zent. I must not act according to emotion. Robla's strength far surpasses my own. Traitor or not, Robla was the commander of the Sovereign Knights Order. His combat prowess and experience were not to be underestimated. I sealed away the bitterness his superiority inspired, then looked around in search of my brother. Where is he? It took me only a brief moment to meet his gaze. He was directing his knights with a silver sword in hand, all while approaching Robla from another angle. I realized then that his red eyes had been watching me the entire time, and that I neglected to pay attention to my allies. Once this is all over, I expect to be scolded for my inexperience. Recalling my brother's attitude when we used to train together at home, I refocused and gripped my spear. Robla was climbing the stairs to the whirling stage. He would prove troublesome for us if he reached the top. But until then, his footing would be poor and his back exposed. I saw my brother give a curt nod, so I squeezed my spear and charged at Robla from behind. Robla turned and dodged my strike, creating the very opening my brother was waiting for. He leaped in from the side and swung his silver blade. Robla let out a grunt and managed to dodge again, but lost his poise in the process. I tossed an offensive magic tool at him before he could ready his weapon. Ugh! Robla spread out his silver cape just in time to block the tool entirely. My brother had spoken true when he told me Lanzanov's silver cloth was immune to mana. The Knight Commander saw my spear and the silver sword in my brother's hand, appeared to weigh up his options, then focused on defending against the latter. He must have concluded that my spear was easier to deal with because he locked swords with my brother while using his cape to block my thrust. Not yet. Wait for an opening. I tried to attack the parts of the Knight Commander's flank not hidden by his silver cape, but even then there was little I could do against his full plate armor. As I continued to strike, I noticed his focus shift more and more to my brother. Dunkelfelger, Robla said, you must understand that Jürgen Schmidt needs a true Zent with the Gruderscheit, and you, Lady Magdalena, you have supported Torokal through his countless struggles. It is not time to relieve him of his terrible burden. I took no interest in the words of a traitor. He had betrayed his lord, and that was reason enough to smite him. I could indulge my curiosity about his background and motives once he was locked up. There was a sharp metallic wail as Robla's and my brother's blades clashed again. It focused my senses as I squeezed the grip of my silver dagger. The tips of their crossed swords each snaked down toward the opposing man's hilt, taking barely an instant, but to me it seemed to move in slow motion. Now. They had moved to ready their swords, again creating the opportunity I was so intently waiting for. I stabbed my silver dagger into Robot's side. Its glinting blade slid through his face-stone armor without any resistance, almost as if he had not been wearing any. The sensation was the same as cutting straight into an opponent's body. What? Robot exclaimed, his eyes wide as saucers. He gazed down at the dagger at his side. When did you get that? The Knight Commander was wide open. My brother thrust his own sword through the man's shoulder as deep as it would go, then drew back and swiped it through the air, shaking the blood from his blade as Robot crumpled before him. Yeah, get him! I confirmed with my own eyes that Lady Rosemine wields the Gruderscheit, my brother said. As a divine avatar of Mestinora, she intends to bestow it upon a person of her choosing. I take no interest in a foreign Zent candidate. Roblet could fight no longer. The knights who had watched our battle rushed over and started disarming him. He would need to endure many long interrogations in the coming days, so he would likely be given a rejuvenation potion to keep him alive. It's over, I said with a relief sigh, as I enjoyed the satisfaction of having crushed my brother's foes, or my husband's foes, of having carried out my duty as a Zent sword. Second bell rang. My brother and I tapped our fists together with victory in our hearts. We can now redirect our focus from the battle to our surroundings. Is that all the prisoners? My brother asked. Free and assist Prince Anastasius and his guard knights. Heifetz, report what happened while we were operating separately. I watched my brother go, then climbed the stairs past where Robba had fallen and gazed upon the auditorium. Dunkelfugger's knights had detained every one of our sovereign adversaries. Prince Anastasius was watching from the audience stands. The group wearing Ehrenfest capes were causing some sort of commotion by the door. Oh God, here we go. Such overwhelming divinity colored my lady's embrace came a cry from their ranks. A goddess has descended into her. Curious, I enhanced my senses to observe them. They were all retainers serving Lady Rosemine. I recognized them from ceremonies and my time spent translating in the underground archive. Her mana certainly has changed, another said. I don't know about a goddess descending into her, though. Can you not feel the supernatural power that now envelops us? Is its intoxicating, all-consuming beauty beyond your comprehension? The only thing beyond my comprehension is how you drew such an outlandish conclusion. Hartman appeared to be the only one causing a stir. The others with him were simply exasperated. Hartman, Lenore said, sighing when she noticed my eyes on them. She bound him with light and set him down in a corner of the auditorium. You have drawn everyone's attention and distracted them from their work. You are not only embarrassing us, but being a bother as well. Reflect on your actions in silence. Her words and deeds were merciless, but proper for a knight on the battlefield. I was impressed. Rarely did women of other duchies have it in them to make such cold, calculated decisions. Still, what was that about a goddess descending? Their discussion reminded me of that unusual sight not too long ago. My focus on Robert had pushed it from my mind, but Lord Ferdinand, Lady Rosemine, and Gervasio had vanished in the statue's light. It seemed that nobody had heard from them since. Where in the world did those three go? I was suddenly reminded of one of the Royal Academy's 20 mysteries. According to Hildebrand, a student who played pranks on altars and shrines had apparently vanished in a burst of light from the statues of the supreme gods and was never seen again. Thinking about it now, the story might have been founded in the process for obtaining the Grudershite. Upon learning it from the underground archive, Lady Rosemine had circled the shrines before disappearing, much like the character in the story. By the time she had returned, she had grown so much that she was unrecognizable. Atop the shrine, she had appeared to be an adult. My brother had said that Lady Rosemine was the divine avatar of a goddess, one who would return the Grudershite to Jurgenschmidt. In that case, it seemed reasonable to assume that Lord Ferdinand and Gervasio had also acquired the Holy Book. If they returned, would any of them bestow the Grudershite upon King Trollcall? Probably not. I thought about each of their relationships with the Zent, then the ordonnances he had exchanged with Lord Ferdinand. I could not help but grimace. There was no one better suited to the role of the Zent than King Trollcall, who had won the Civil War and ruled the country for over a decade, despite the great pains it had caused him and the strong opposition of the Sovereign Temple. O supreme gods, if others are being granted the Grudershite, I ask that King Trollcall receive one as well. May his years of suffering be justly rewarded. I prayed atop the whirling stage, but neither it nor the statue shone. Oh, Gervasio, descent of a goddess. Oh, here we go. We might actually get some information here. Terza, do not resist, spoke Ewerman. Accept it all. Fill your vessel and allow not a single drop to spill. Become one with Messinor. Okay, this is when he was trying to get his Grudershite. Okay. Despite my attempts to explain that my name was Gervasio, not Terza, Ewerman continued to address me as he pleased. It seemed the gods understood only the name under which one was initially registered. Hearing it was somewhat unpleasant and reminded me of my time in the villa, but I did not care. My only concern was receiving the Book of Messinora, despite having moved to Lanzanov. Ewerman's voice filled me with bliss, as did the stream of knowledge raining down on me as light. I could not contain my satisfaction about having obtained the Grudershite. With it, I could finally become the Zent. I had been raised a branch royal in Jurgenschmidt, only to be sent away to Lanzanov upon coming of age, and made to support the entire country alone as the sole owner of a staff. But now, I would overturn that cursed fate. My cheer was unmeasurable, but it lasted only a moment. Such a vast wealth of knowledge was hard to absorb. Matters that piqued my interest came continuously to mind, and pausing to focus on them cost me the information that followed. Casting aside all resistance was easier said than done. And Ewerman chastised me with such each mistake. Out of nowhere, the light of wisdom had vanished. I could not tell how much time had passed, but I could sense that its disappearance was premature. I opened my eyes confused. Was that all? I asked. No, it was not. Ewerman stared quizzically up at the sky. I wonder what is going on. As I suspected, the process was not complete. Ewerman muttered that the gods were still connected. I cautiously looked up as well, unsure what was happening, and the light returned. What? I cried. So it had yet to finish. Accept the knowledge, do not resist. So he said, but the light soon vanished again. I could not even begin to fathom the reason. Ewerman looked at the sky a second time, then muttered that the process had indeed concluded. Terza, confirm that you have obtained the Book of Messinora at once. Grudershite. I appeared in my hands. I trembled with emotion as I opened the cover, then blanched with horror. The text was full of gaps, and the pages near the end were completely blank, indicating an unmistakable failure to absorb all the knowledge. Nice! Ha ha! The interruptionist must be to blame, Ewerman said. This is my first time encountering such an occurrence. I can say only that your Book of Messinora is incomplete, which makes you insufficient as a Zent candidate. My breath caught in my throat, and my fingers dug into my Book of Messinora. This strange turn of events had never even crossed my mind. If the gods abandoned me now, my work would all have been for nothing. Is there a way to compensate for the wisdom I lost? I asked, eyeing Ewerman carefully. As I recall, I was once told that Zents of the past supplemented their incomplete books with knowledge from a certain archive. If you can find it, you might be able to make up for your failings. He was likely referring to the archive beneath the Royal Academy's library. I recalled the door that had denied me entry, and a wave of bitterness washed over me. If not that archive, it was bound to be another somewhere in the royal palace that only the Zent could enter. I would not be able to move forward without becoming the Zent. That girl, I wonder whether her book of Messinora is complete. She was that Archduke candidate who circled the shrines before me, failed to enter the underground archive, and then disappeared from the upstairs of the reading room. She was said to be capable of performing ceremonies with true divine instruments, and the Sovereign Temple had requested possession of her in exchange for their cooperation. Rosemine, that was the name Robla had given for her. He had doubtless visited this place before me. If word spread that she was the god's favorite to become the next Zent, no strings Robla could pull would change that outcome. How were there 3 Zent candidates, yet none of you have a complete book of Messinora? Ewerman complained. Good grief, this generation. Well, it's not his fault, to be completely honest. Judging by his remark, Rosemine's book of Messinora was also flawed in some way. I should have been relieved, but my focus was drawn to the 3rd apparent Zent candidate. Robla had mentioned nothing of the sort. Detlindig proclaimed to be one, but she was lacking mana, elements, and intelligence. There existed no world in which she had made it here. Ewerman, might I ask about the other Zent candidates? They are Mine and Quinta. To my shock, neither name belonged to the Archduke candidate Robla had told me about. Perhaps Mine was Rosemine? The latter name did contain the former, and the fact that she had 2 in the first place told me she was no ordinary noble. There were bound to be secrets surrounding the circumstances of her birth. Quinta, however, I immediately recognized. It was one of the names used to number young seeds destined to become face stones. Only upon leaving the adulterous villa would one receive a proper name. I was born Terza and then called Gervasio by my mother when I was baptized and relocated to the side building. This other Zent candidate could only have been Ferdinand, he who had also escaped the villa. They each have only a portion of the same book, Ewerman continued. I instructed them to fight to the death so that one could claim the remains of the other, but I cannot say when that might happen. Quinta's rudeness considered, I would rather Mine complete her book and become the Zent. The other 2 candidates were in a position more troublesome than my own. One might think that put me at an advantage, but I needed to be wary of one of them dying and the other completing their book. Hit me. Is it not likely that Quinta has already died, allowing Mine to obtain a complete book? Leonzio had informed me that Detlinde's instant death poison had not actually turned Ferdinand into a face stone. She had instead sealed him in Aaron's box mana replenishment hall, where his mana was slowly being drained. Aaron Fester requested and received royal permission for Rosemine to charge to his rescue, but Robla had said nothing about his fate. I was told only that Aaron's box foundation was stolen and that the new Ob imprisoned the Londonavians in the duchy. Assuming that Mine was Rosemine and Quinta was Ferdinand, it was possible that she had gone not to save him, but to absorb the wisdom from his face stone. Still, Ewerman said, perhaps Jurgen Smith's mana crisis is to blame for these unprecedented obstructions. This is the first time since its founding that the country's foundation has been this close to drying out completely. That danger was the only reason he had yet to dispose of us. Ewerman continued, problems have arisen wherever one looks. We have a lackluster pool of candidates, but they will have to do. The alternative is total annihilation. Terza, failed the foundation at once. I did not know how to reach it. The information was missing from my book of Messinora and could not be searched for, a consequence of not having obtained all the knowledge, no doubt. If nothing else, I suspect Robert can tell me where the royals supply their mana. Despite the unexpected trouble, I now had a book of Messinora and the understanding that the other Zent candidates' books were also complete. Moreover, Ewerman's command that I replenish the foundation could be considered a formal recognition of my status as a candidate. That was a good enough result. As you will, I said. I shall go to the foundation as quickly as I can. An exit then appeared, which deposited me atop the Royal Academy's altar. I gazed down and saw an intense battle being fought below. There were capes of colors other than the familiar black and silver. Other duchies must have noticed Roblet's maneuvering. Roblet was protecting the altar to shield me and cried out for me to reveal my Grucheshite. I spoke my chant, and the goddess-given book appeared. It looked entirely like the Bible. One could not tell at a glance that its pages were incomplete. Those below fervently extolled me as a true Zent. And with that, Jurgen Schmidt acknowledged my claim to the throne. I was relieved, but only for a moment. A young woman shouted Grucheshite elsewhere in the auditorium. It had not occurred to me that another Zent candidate might be here. That was mine, no doubt. Did she take Quinta's knowledge and come to meet Ewerman as one with the complete book of Messinora? Did she come into conflict with Robla in the process? As I pondered, mine began praying to the gods and strengthening her allies. Such prayers had never come up during my education, nor had Rabba informed me of them. I was learning for the first time that one's prayers could reach the gods in Jurgenschmidt. I opened my book of Messenora, wondering whether I, too, could grant such blessings. Its pages were covered with prayers to the gods. These must be them. I read the prayers out loud. My mana was drained and turned into a blessing that invigorated my comrades. It would appear the gods grant me their blessings as well. The convenience of my book and the might of the gods hit me all at once. I was moved, though I also understood what a grave threat mine posed. She was a Wehrman's favorite to become the next Zent. She had obtained the book before I obtained mine, and clearly understood it better than I did, and worst of all, once she was adopted, she would no doubt gain access to the archive beneath the library. Even as a young woman yet to come of age, she seemed to be the dominant Zent candidate. I was focused on mine, wanting to see what else her book could do, when someone hit me with a surprise attack. Quinta had appeared atop the altar, having somehow managed to reach me. His appearance alone made it clear that we were blood-related relatives. He bore the distinct features of my older sister Saradina. So he lives. I was surprised to see him, and Wehrman had instructed my fellow Zent candidates to slay each other. That they were both alive, told me their books were still incomplete. Now then, which of them do I stand to gain more from? I considered which of my opponents to keep alive, while Quinta continued to target me. His strikes were rapid but unworthy of note. They bore little force or mana. So much for attacks only Zent candidates with the Book of Messenora could perform. He made no attempt to even form his, so I could not learn from his example. Should I dispatch him now and take his face down before mine can? I moved to use the instant death poison against Quinta, but mine cried out before I could. A deluge of water swept through the auditorium below. Is that a Washin? Never have I seen one so fierce. As my eyes widened in surprise, the whirlpool spat mine up into the air. She fell toward us, so I grabbed and threw an offensive magic tool. Rose mine. Quinta hit me while I was distracted. Though I expected him to press the attack, he unmade that strange weapon of his, and instead shot bands of life from his stab at mine. It gave me more than enough time to drink a rejuvenation potion. I wanted to strike him while he was pointing up at the air, but a counter from mine's charms stalled me. The moment I raised my shield above my head, Quinta threw a magic tool with his free hand. I could not guard against both attacks. Mine was rescued as I covered my face. But why save her? And why are they both working against me? They should have been trying to kill one another, but instead they were cooperating. In terms of mana, neither one of my opponents posed a threat to me. I could easily eradicate them. The problem was that killing one would complete the other's Book of Messenora, which would put me in an even more troublesome situation. Mine is far more dangerous than Quinta. From what I could sense, her mana paled in comparison to my own. How curious, then, that she had not seemed to spend much through her prayers and magic. I was unsure how to control my mana when it was being drawn from my body on its own, and the blessings I granted my allies had drained me even more than expected. Anyone who prayed for their comrades surely did so at the cost of their own complete combat potential, but mine seemed entirely unfazed. Am I simply not used to praying? Or does she have an abundance of top-quality rejuvenation potions? Maybe both. On top of that, I could not have cast a Washin large enough to flood the auditorium. Her every action was beyond me, including what she was doing now. Grant me your shield of wind so that I might blow away those who mean to cause harm. Mine prayed, and a dome formed around her with the same sharp noise as a blade being drawn. The divine instruments in the hands of the statues around us began to shine as if responding to her mana. Her actions were beyond prediction, and merely standing in her presence made me feel as though I was staring into a bottomless pit. Quinta is not someone you should protect, I said. In fact, as I understand it, you are duty-bound to kill him and complete your book. Was that not the order you received, mine? Cease your useless prattle and die, Quinta said calmly. He swung his sword and sent a ball of rainbow mana toward me. I recognized his attack. It was simple enough, charged mana launched with a swipe, and its power depended on one's capacity. As one raised in Jurgenschmidt, I considered it nothing new. Is that the best he can do? A simple charged attack? He's using low-grade attacks to wear down your charms, dude. Do you not get that? Quinta was relentless, but his slight mana capacity and simplistic attacks made for a placid assault. I readied my shield, then leaped back to follow the mana and swing my short sword. I would slice open the flow of my opponent's mana to create a safe spot. Avoiding the attacks of those with such little mana tended to be trivial. Before I could slice through the attack, however, the statues around us drained the mana from my sword. Quinta's orb shone brilliantly was also absorbed before it could reach me. The divine instruments in the statue's hands flashed, and pillars of light crossed through the air. I suddenly felt weightless, and like a strange force was pulling me somewhere. Then I was back in the Garden of Beginnings. I can conclude only that the gods had teleported us here. A Wehrman looked even more displeased as before, So I immediately knelt, feeling some surprise about the nature of our situation. What in the world are you 3 candidates doing? Ewerman snapped. Jurgenschmidt must be replenished with most mana post-haste. He was exceptionally displeased at mine and Quinta for keeping me from reaching the foundation. I can only hope he smites them both for me. In contrast to my show of respect, Quinta made his book of Messinora and protested. Mine was outright ignoring Ewerman, too focused on trying to glimpse her companion's Bible. Oh, come on, let me read it for a little while. Don't be selfish. Did they not realize their predicament? They were standing before a former god, and now understood why Ewerman had called Quinta insolent. Ewerman refused to accept Quinta's explanation. He ordered the man to disappear, then raised a hand and unleashed a slew of attacks. His expression did not change, and his stance seemed relaxed, but each ball of divine mana was powerful enough to match the strongest attack I could muster. Quinta's shield and charm shattered one by one. Go forth, Terza, Ewerman instructed. Replenish this country's foundation. I stood up to answer his call. There could not be a better outcome than the gods taking my side and eliminating my enemies. But my opponents were tenacious. Even while weathering Ewerman's attacks, Quinta managed to shoot me in the thigh. I crumbled to the ground, having lost my charms in our battle atop the altar. Ewerman's support had put me too much at ease. I went to drink a rejuvenation potion. I told you not to interfere, Quinta. Ewerman was enraged. Quinta had angered the gods and would surely be eliminated. I, on the other hand, was being asked to replenish the foundation. I waited patiently for the healing to complete, assured of my safety. Mine jumped in front of Quinta to protect him from Ewerman's attacks. They would die together, I thought, but mine cast another spell I did not recognize. Vinsunhang. She spread out a black cape that absorbed Ewerman's divine mana. I could not believe my eyes. Though she grimaced in pain, she shot her hands up into the air and a radiant beam formed above them. Light rained down from the sky in response, enveloping her in a cocoon that slowly ascended. Now what? I could not fathom what mine was doing, but Ewerman seemed to understand. He stared at her in disbelief and muttered, Messinora. Quinta simply watched in surprise, no longer having to endure an onslaught of attacks. Here we go. This is where Messinora showed up. The cocoon slowly took human form. Mine had returned. Her body flashed and she stayed floating in midair. The light surrounding her remained as if radiating from within her. She slowly opened her eyes, which were more golden than before, and an overwhelming force compelled me to kneel. This being was on another level from me. A single glance confirmed it. Rosemine. Quinta reached out to touch mine, but was immediately thrust back. Stand down, insolent one, she said. Her voice was the same, but her tone was stern and dignified. There was a haughty look in her eyes, and the aura she exuded was far heavier than before. Though the being before us took mine's form, she was something else entirely. This is Messinora we're talking to here. How rare of you to descend, Ewerman said. Pray tell, what became of mine? The being forced Quinta to his knees, then floated over to Ewerman. Rosemine is in my library, she said with a kind smile that could not have been further from the look of contempt she had given me and my fellow Zent candidate. She asked me to save Quinta and quell your wrath. So, mine summoned and manifested the goddess of wisdom. Is such a thing even possible? Messinora reached out to Ewerman. I shall grant you a portion of my heavenly power. Are you certain, he asked, wearing a troubled frown. Wait a moment, Quinta said. You took Rosemine's form, but did she consent to you giving her power to Ewerman? He was right to be concerned. Outside of emergencies, humans only shared their mana with their parents or maternal siblings, or when dying another's mana in the case of marriage or engagement. Ewerman's reaction made it clear that giving one's heavenly power was just as abnormal. The goddess of wisdom smiled and nodded. She gave me permission to use her body as I please. I wish to save you, Ewerman, so I am deeply relieved to have this opportunity. Come now. Her cheeks flushed with joy as she took one of his hands. She asked that he raise the other, then exhaled and took it as well. Heavenly power gathered in her palms before moving into him. We could only watch as Ewerman was given new life. I cannot say how much time passed, but the two eventually separated. Though our current Zent candidates are not without their flaws, we should not reduce their number, Messinora said. I hereby forbid the taking of any lives. Then she turned to Quinta and me. That goes for everyone. Does this decree apply only to Zent candidates, or does it include those who came with me to Jurgenschmidt, I asked. This was my chance to protect the Londinavians who followed me. It applies to all. The mana shortage is so extreme that we cannot waste any more lives. Wait, Quinta said. Those who violated the laws of men must be punished. Would you forbid that on the basis of the divine? Is it your decree that crimes must not be disciplined? Indeed, all life must be treasured. Those who violate my decree shall face divine punishment. Humans can die prematurely as a result of starvation, disease, and Phoebus attacks. Would such incidents also warrant the god's wrath? I forbid only the deliberate taking of life. Deaths that result from one's environment do not count. Quinta gave a resigned nod, having deduced that the goddess of wisdom could not be swayed. Very well, I shall inform the royal and archducal families before we punish our prisoners. More importantly, however, is the matter of the new Zent. Only those who have spent their lives in Jurgenschmidt should be allowed to lead its nobles. The throne cannot go to the king of a foreign nation. Quenta argued that I was ignorant of the nuances of ruling Jurgenschmidt and overall unsuited to becoming its Zent. Ewerman was quick to discard that notion. My wish is for a new Zent to be born post-haste. I desire nothing else in particular. He who is motivated to rule may take the throne. Ewerman, I said, please decree that I am the new Zent, I explained. Lanzanov's situation to him and Messinora I explained the situation to them, stating that I wished to take the throne in part to reward those who had assisted me. Moreover, when it came to quickly dying a foundation, those of Mormana were obviously superior. I was better suited to rule. Do you wish to take the throne in his place? Messinora asked Quenta. He thought for a moment, then said, no, I do not. I wish to give the current royal family a magic tool, Gruchite, minimizing the risk of any further discord, and revive the religious ceremonies of the past. In the long term, I shall ensure that more people obtain books of Messinora, returning us to the days when Zents were chosen from a pool of viable candidates. A respectable goal, Ewerman agreed. But it would take far too long. I do not care who takes the throne. Replenishing the foundation and keeping Jurgenschmidt alive are my main priorities. So if I replenish the foundation, you will give me free rein to act as I please, Quenta asked. Correct. Once the foundation is full, I shall again step back from the world of men. Quenta and I stared one another down. Not being able to kill would make it hard to eliminate my enemies and secure the foundation. The fighting would not stop until we had a fair way to decide who would take the throne, but nothing non-lethal came to mind. O goddess of wisdom, I said, please lend us your guidance. How can we decide the next Zent fairly and without death? In the past, candidates compared the size of their books, looking to see who had the fewest gaps. But that would not be fair in this case. The goddess sat on Ewerman's shoulder and pondered. Whatever shall we do? From the god's perspective, what are the most desirable qualities of a Zent? Quenta asked. Popularity? Mana capacity? Mana capacity is essential, of course. I would also rather the candidates show mastery of using the book I granted them. Ewerman, what do you think? I do not care as long as Jurgenschmidt is replenished. I see, Quenta paused and thought. Over the course of this war, we have filled the country gates of wind, fire, and darkness. Could we compete to also fill the gates of earth, water, and light? We could demonstrate our talent for manipulating mana by searching our books for the relevant teleportation circles and then drawing them. The more mana one had, the faster one could supply it, meaning our capacities could also be compared. And most important of all, our race would go toward replenishing Jurgenschmidt, making it a fruitful endeavor for Ewerman. Both gods were in support of the idea. One must have the Book of Messinora to access the country gates, so indeed this is a suitable competition for Zent candidates, Ewerman declared. The gods may decide who goes to which gate. Quenta must have been especially confident in his talent to have proposed this competition, so my mana capacity was far greater than his. He asked several more questions and used the answers to formalize the rules. As someone who had spent almost his entire upbringing in the Indulgence Villa, I did not know the locations of any country gates except Aaron's Unable to participate in the discussion, I elected to do some research instead. Tarza, does your book allow you to access the country gates? Messinora asked. I checked. Indeed, my book contained several relevant teleportation circles. They were popped with holes, but it was nothing a little cross-referencing would not fix. Yes, goddess. Excellent. It seems that Messinora also wanted me to become the Zent. Mine was an element of uncertainty now that she had a goddess inhabiting her, but it was in a race to supply mana, I was at a clear advantage. Ewerman paused and thought. That reminds me, Messinora, the light of your wisdom abruptly stopped while Terza was receiving his book. Would you allow him to return here to obtain the rest? He was concerned that my Bible was still incomplete. Messinora's eyebrows raised ever so slightly in response. She gestured me over to her, so I approached and opened my book. A frown crossed her forehead as she touched it. He can obtain the wisdom he lost while unfocused, but not the parts that were stolen from him, she said. More importantly, Tarza, it would seem your book contains only fragments of the path to the foundation. My entire body went rigid. The gods had discovered the secret I was trying to keep from them. It terrified me to think how Ewerman would respond. He wanted someone who could replenish Jurgenschmidt post-haste. This is so weird. it's mind's body, I swear to God. I see, Ewerman said, his tone sharp. Tarza would not be able to reach the foundation even upon becoming the new Zent. Quenta, what about mines and your books? Messinora asked. She had called the girl Rose mine before, though the significance of changing to mine was lost on me. He shook his head, not even bothering to make his book for the goddess. Mine is fragmented, so I expect hers is as well. In that case, I shall guide whoever wins to the foundation, Ewerman decided. I exhaled relieved. There was hope for me yet. For this to remain a fair contest, the gods should refrain from helping or showing favoritism, Quinta said. It seems to me that you both prefer Gervasio.
I would like to...
I accepted, but only for the duration of our race. She said it was only natural for the gods to favor those they liked and who prayed to them regularly while refusing to grant their protection to those who annoyed them. I took that to mean the gods thought positively of me, or they simply disliked Quinta. Quinta had tried to attack a wereman mere moments ago, so Messinor was anything but fond of him. She had been lightly crushing him ever since her arrival. My work here is done, so I shall take my leave. Call it to mind if you want her to return. I would advise that Tirzah do it. Quinta's voice might not reach her anymore. What have you done to her? Quinta exclaimed, his expression morphing into one of horror. Messinor cocked her head and stared down at him still on the wereman's shoulder. I played with her mind to make her body easier to control, never severing her connection to memories more important to her than her love of books. Shit! That's not good! She did ask a goddess for help. Something of this nature cannot come without sacrifice. Having a goddess descend and grant one's wish came at an even heavier cost than expected. Books were important, but I doubted they would ever outright weigh a person's memories of their loved ones. Mine must have forgotten almost everything about her life. Messinor concluded, the vision of someone she has forgotten is unlikely to reach her in my library. Is there a way to repair memories that have been severed? Quinta asked at length. I cared painfully little about this mess. It had nothing to do with me, but Quinta was intent on learning more from the goddess. She replied that channeling mana into mine would restore her memories related to that one person, but also indicated that mine's body would resist the mana of someone who was now a stranger to her. How would she react to someone who she cannot even remember forcing his mana into her? You believe in the importance of permission, do you not? Most of all, Quinta, would you rather she remembers you or has forgotten you? The goddess gave Quinta a venomous smile and then vanished. The light radiating from mine's body began to fade, and she gently descended from Edwarman's shoulder. Rosemine! Quinta rushed over and caught her body. He cried out her name again and again, but she did not react. Her memories of him really had been severed, an indication that she had cared about him more than books. Wow, that's saying something. I was fine with the girl staying unconscious forever, but Quinta embraced her, took her hands in his, and started channeling his mana into her. Again and again he called out to her. She must have been precious to him, for he was leaving himself wide open. Unlike when we had fought atop the shrine, I would never expect such compassion from my nephew. His naked desperation almost made me laugh. He was showing weakness to an enemy, a man he had tried to slaughter before Messinora's intervention. There were countless ways to eliminate one's foes without killing them, whether it be through imprisonment, blackmail, or luring them into a trap. One had to be a genuine fool to deliver themselves to their opponent moments before a contest for the throne. Irwerman, is she likely to return at all? I asked. If time is of the essence, we can leave her here and exclude her from the race. I expected to be met with agreement, but Irwerman's urgency had vanished since receiving Messinora's power. He gazed upon mine and Quinta and said, be patient for now. Messinora wanted all three of you to compete. The will of a goddess is best followed, so let us wait and see whether Quinta gets through to her. Disobeying the divine was out of the question, so I took out another of my rejuvenation potions and agreed to wait. For a reason unbeknownst to me, my mana had yet to fully recover. Maybe the battle atop the altar had drained me more than I thought. My wounds were slowing my regeneration, or the potions themselves were simply too weak. In any case, a mana-dependent contest lay ahead of us, so it made sense to focus on replenishing mine. I seemed to be running low. I checked my supply of potions and frowned. Circling the shrines had cost me several, not to mention pouring mana into Messinora's statue. I used a potion before obtaining my book, then another in the auditorium. I drank the one in my hand, leaving me with only one. You are Rosemine, correct? Give me a proper response. Mine regained consciousness just as my mana finished recovering. She engaged in some foolish back and forth with Quinta, once again acting like they were oblivious to the gravity of our situation. I only had so much patience, so I interjected and asked whether they were ready. That was when mine finally came to her senses. It's all coming back to me. We were in the beat of battle. The goddess's power lingered within her, causing her to glow a little, but her words and deeds were anything but divine. Watching her fumble was like witnessing Messinora's descent into madness. She was sullying my beautiful memories of the goddess, so I wished she would keep her mouth shut. We have no more time to waste, Ewerman announced. The race will now begin. The gods shall decide your destination for you. Light rained down on all three of us. Mine was golden, belonging to the goddess of light, meaning the divines had given me Glistenmire. Now go, Ewerman said. Forge your own teleportation circles and replenish the country gates. We all shouted Grujashite and made our books of Messinora. My research had given me enough information to draw the teleportation circle I needed. It was complex, but with a steady hand, copy and place. A sudden cry drew me from my thoughts. I instinctively looked at mine and saw that she had drawn a teleportation circle in mere moments. What was that? Ewerman asked, sharing my confusion. Mine did not respond. She had simply teleported to Klassenberg with a smug look on her face. I frantically searched my book of Messinora, but saw no record of the spell she had used. You will not find it, Quinta said. She created it from scratch. I gazed up from my book and saw my opponent draw his own teleportation circle much faster than I expected. The speed with which his hands moved made his experience all too clear. No wonder he had proposed this race despite his inferior mana capacity. My time as Lanzanov's king had accustomed me to moving mana around, but the country had no materials containing any. My only chances to brew were when repairing magic tools that already existed. I was inexperienced with drawing magic circles and expected the process would take me longer than the others. That said, his advantage is minor. It will not stop me from taking the lead. As I focused, trying to draw as quickly as I could, Quinta shot my hand. I dropped my book of Messinora and slumped over, creating an opportunity he used to shoot and destroy my teleportation circle. What? You coward! We were instructed not to kill one another, Quinta said plainly. There are no rules against mere obstruction. That wound will not prove fatal. This rejuvenation potion will close it for you. He sneered and threw a cat bottle in my direction. It clattered along the white stone and rolled over to me. Indeed, Werman mused, agreeing with my opponent for some unfathomable reason. There were no rules against you interfering with one another. It is poor manners, but this would not be the first time Quinta has been so tactless. Yeah. Having managed to delay me, Quinta held up his book next to his completed circle and said, Kirschlessel, Kassenberg. To my surprise, he was going not to his own gate, but to mine. She must have been part of the way through replenishing it. I was unsure what to think. Quinta had already obstructed me. Was he now going to interfere with mine? He had seemed so desperate to protect her a moment ago, but perhaps he had only been trying to fool me and earn her trust. If so, his heart was as black as the darkest night. I cannot allow the plans of such an evil man to come to fruition. Werman, I require assistance. Restorative blessings could only be used on others, and uncapping a potion with a wounded hand was no easy feat. Thus I called upon the only other person with me. Even if he could not heal me, he would at least be able to summon someone. Meanwhile, however, Werman merely cocked his head at me. What are you saying, Terza? It was just established that gods cannot interfere. Quinta gave you a potion. Use it. If you do not act quickly, the others may steal an even greater march on you. Can you not see my wound? You can hold it in one hand and use your mouth to turn it if you have to. And in any case, how can he expect me to use Quinta's rejuvenation potion? The man openly declared that he wished to obstruct me. Does Werman truly believe this concoction is genuine? I thought he wanted me to become the Zent over the other two. I was stunned that we saw the situation so differently. It reminded me of Quinta's remark that the ways of men and gods could not be compared. The gods' incomprehensible perspective and my uncertain future swirled unpleasantly in my heart. It is much too late to back out. Using my limp hand, I somehow managed to bring my last rejuvenation potion up to my lips and drink it. I could feel it working, but it was taking a suspiciously long time to heal my wound. That's what had Quinta shut me with. I anxiously waited for the pain to fade, then resumed drawing my circle. Kirschlessel, Glissenmeyer. The teleportation circle took me to a room with rainbow walls. I had passed through country gates when leaving Jurgensmith for Lanzanov and when returning via Ahrensbach, but this was my first time properly entering one. Since are required to open and close these gates as well as supply them with mana. My thoughts wandered to days gone by. Though I grew up in a branch royal, unlike my sisters, I was never permitted to attend the Royal Academy. I was the future king of Lanzanov, so I was encouraged not to learn about Jurgensmith and to instead focus on the country I would go on to rule. I went along with it back then, but now I understood the true reason. Listening to Quinta and Werman speak in the Garden of Beginnings had opened my eyes to the fact that more had been kept from me than I realized. But now I can carry out my own research. I checked my book to see what I should do next, then pressed it against the nearest wall. Mana passed through it and into the country gate. Quinta's obstruction had delayed my teleportation, but this race was far from over. Mine was probably facing her own problems, and Quinta was wasting his time trying to interrupt us. Impatience took over, and I pressed my book against the wall with greater force, hoping my mana would move faster. Huh? My hand suddenly twisted in the air, causing me to stumble forward. I could not comprehend this reason, but then I tried to channel more mana into the gate. My book of Messinora had vanished. He destroyed the metal! That was when he destroyed the metal! Yes! Dude! Does this mean I finished supplying the gate? I decided to consult my Bible. If nothing else, that would tell me how to confirm the work here was done. Grujashite. Grujashite! No matter how many times I repeated the spell, my book did not appear. In fact, I could no longer even form my staff. Such an important tool that had been with me since just before my coming of age was gone. What is going on? I exclaimed. What is happening? My voice quavered. I was unaware of anything that could cause one's staff to disappear. Another inadequacy in my education, perhaps. And without my book of Messinora, I could not investigate what was happening or how to resolve it. My mind went blank, and my throat burned as it became hard to breathe. I searched my belongings and the inside of the gate for anything that might help me, but there was nothing. Not a single means of escape. I could not even open the gate and pass through Glissenmeyer. Could this be another of Quinta's obstructions? This thought came to me as I once again looked around, feeling more and more like I was trapped in a cage. His sneer upon shooting me in the hand said it all. I could not prove it, but I was convinced this was all part of his scheme. I choked, so overcome with rage that my body trembled and my head started to burn. This was beyond cruel. I raised my hand, now without a staff, and slammed it against the nearest wall. In accordance with his promise to the goddess, Quinta had not taken my life. I was still alive, but alive or not, without a staff, I could not live as a Jürgen Schmidt noble or even return to being the king of Lanzenov. Yet, you are stuck! If I failed to become the Zent, what would happen to Brabla and the others who assisted me? How would those who came from Lanzenov be punished? The country's ivory buildings would collapse without a staff-wielding king to succeed me. The faces of wives, children, and grandchildren I had wanted to bring to Jürgen Schmidt flashed in my mind. Oh gods, is such a malicious obstruction permitted in a contest to decide the true Zent? I beseech you to punish Quinta, to save me. Save me. Evil of this nature must not be forgiven. But no matter how much I shouted, my staff never returned, and my prayers did not reach the gods. Ha 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 ha! Yes! Okay, by the time you see this, I will have fixed the issue. But yeah, had an issue recording part 6. I was recording, and my brother came in and asked me to go on Amazon and do something. I figured, okay, I'll edit this out later. He wanted to buy something to do with this car. So I was putting his information in, doing what I gotta do, and I didn't realize that it had stopped my recording and started 2 separate live streams because I have the button set up that way. I forgot. So after I did that, I went back to record, thinking that it was recording. I should have checked because then I would have avoided this whole situation. I got to this point, and I was going to check and see how much, I'd already recorded, and it wasn't recording, it was live streaming. So, yeah, by the time you see this, I will have downloaded that live stream and edited it into the editing process, so I will not lose it, essentially. Because it's a 33-minute clip, essentially. Well, technically less than that because I had some interruptions in it, but you get what I'm saying. By the time you see this, that will be fixed. Okay. And this is Ferdinand's point of view on what the freak he has been planning, essentially. For dealing with Gervasio, essentially. And I must say that cannot wait to see what happens when you get him out. Because he can't do shit now. Ferdinand, a battle that must be won. This is not someone I can fight and defeat head on. I was in the Royal Academy's auditorium doing battle with an opponent whose mana surely exceeded that of anyone in Jürgen Schmidt, including his own, I might add. Which is scary, to be completely honest, because Ferdinand, I think, has the most mana in Ehrenfest, and might, if besides Gervasio, he might have been the most mana, possibly in all of Jürgen Schmidt. Maybe. If I'm right, let me know. If wrong, whatever. The Archduke of Sevilla took great care to maximize the capacities of those born there, and even then, Gervasio was said to have been head and shoulders above the rest. He was also the king of Lanzenov, and it seemed painfully unlikely that he had rested on his laurels. I expected the man to have been compressing his mana ever since taking the throne. So that's been a while. As the only member of his country with a staff, Gervasio was tasked with supplying Lanzenov alone. One needed only to consider how many archducal family members were required to sustain a single duchy to realize just how strong he must have been, carrying the weight of an entire nation on his shoulders, with the support of perhaps his predecessor at most. Yeah, that's a lot. That's like the Zent having to do this by himself. With the Gruderscheid, I might add. No, not without the Gruderscheid. He knew how to keep his mana expenditure to a minimum while still dealing truly devastating blows. As I am now, his mana capacity and technique are far greater than my own. I rained attacks on Gervasio simply to keep him from fighting back. Once he became accustomed to my various tools and retaliated, my defeat would come in a matter of moments. My opponent appeared to have no weapons of note besides his instant death poison, but even then I was barely able to keep up with him. I was struck with bitterness as he deftly and easily blocked my attacks. However, this is a war, not a duel. We had come here to stop Gervasio from becoming the Zent. It did not matter how many of us fell in the process, as long as we kept him from the throne. Victory was ours. In that regard, subjugating the Indulgent Sevilla with a surprise attack in the dead of night and seizing his resources had proved crucial. It was less of a blow than I would have liked, but it did raise our chances of success. Atop the altar, Gervasio continued to drink rejuvenation potions. I did not know how many he had with him, but I doubted there were many, or that he was concealing any offensive magic tools. He had come to the Royal Academy not to fight, but to visit the library and obtain the Book of Mestanora. There was also a chance he would not be able to use all the potions at his disposal depending on their strengths. I shall gradually deplete his potions and mana. Does he have any other openings? Gervasio had just obtained his Book of Mestanora, so he had yet to master using it. Furthermore, considering Lonzanov's focus on maintaining tools and structures that already existed, he would not have much experience using mana to create something new. That was the only area in which I could surpass him. If something happened to give him the upper hand there as well, he would turn the tables on me in mere moments. Or so I thought. In the events that followed, Mestanora revealed that Gervasio's book was fragmented, a consequence of our earlier interference. Which is good! It was complete enough that he could patch up most of the gaps in the Underground Archive, but for now, I was at a comfortable advantage. Rosemind's absurd actions had worked in my favor. If winning through a direct battle is out of the question, I must work in the shadows, set traps, and prey on my opponent's weaknesses. I pretended to heed the Goddess of Wisdom's advice and proposed that we race to fill the country gates of mana. The entire time, I manipulated the conversation and ensured the rules would suit my intentions. Now go, forge your own teleportation circles and replenish the country gates. Grucheshite. At once, we 3 Zent candidates formed our Books of Mestanora to make teleportation circles. Rosemind used the replication spell she had created to finish her circle in an instant, then teleported away. Perhaps I should have learned it after all. Yeah, that would have been a good idea. There had not been time for me to practice the spell, but seeing Rosemind use it once again made its convenience all too apparent. Yeah, now you want to learn it. Irwerman and Gervasio were stunned to have witnessed a brand new spell. The latter scoured his Book of Mestanora in an attempt to find it, but he never would. It was Rosemind's invention and would not appear in the book until she or I died. I observed Gervasio while drawing my magic circle. His speed was of no particular note. Maintenance was the priority in Lonzanov, and its kings had few opportunities to brew, create magic tools, or draw magic circles. Destroying my opponent's circle would force him to draw it anew, but how much time would that buy me? Was he completely focused on the matter at hand, or was he watching me in turn? I could not miss even the slightest detail. If my next move fails, my entire plan will crumble to dust. I continued to eye Gervasio as I came close to finishing my circle, then carefully retrieved one of my magic tools. Hopefully he had not noticed the slight movement of my cape. Gervasio suddenly turned to look at me. He recoiled a little when our eyes met, but he was focused on my almost complete teleportation circle. His was not even halfway done. I could guess from the slight crease in his brow that he was bitter about not being able to match my speed. Maybe he was still shaken by Rosemind's new spell, or maybe he was stressed about being so far behind me. But Gervasio simply returned to completing his teleportation circle. He was not paying attention to me in the slightest. Now! Upon completing my teleportation circle, I shot Gervasio in the hand to further distract him, then shot his circle, causing it to dissipate. What? You coward! Gervasio barked. He had crumbled to the ground, but it was only a flesh wound. As per Mestanora's wishes, my attack was meant to slow him down, not claim his life. As much as he thought it was spineless, it was his own fault for letting his guard down. I threw a potion in his direction. We were instructed not to kill one another. There were no rules against mere obstruction. Indeed, Irwerman agreed. There were no rules against you interfering with one another, though it was very rude to do so. Gervasio's eyes widened in unwarranted disbelief. The gods would not interfere as long as Mestanora's decree was being followed. Their only concern was whether men upheld the agreements they made with the divine, which became blatantly obvious if one considered exactly when the gods had intervened throughout Jürgen Schmidt's long history. The gods do not think as men do. Gervasio needs to realize that. As long as I gave him a rejuvenation potion and made it clear I was not trying to dispatch him, not even the Goddess of Wisdom would complain. It was unlikely Gervasio would drink the potion for fear of poison, but I did not care. The gesture was meant only to reassure the gods. In the event that he did consume it, though, he would quickly discover its purpose, using the drinker's mana to completely heal their wounds and restore their stamina. So essentially, it would drain his mana to regain his stamina, essentially. So he would be without mana. For as long as he cannot use his hand, Gervasio will need to drink a potion of some kind. Drinking my rejuvenation potion would drain his mana. Drinking his own would deplete his stock even further. His next move was guaranteed to benefit me. Before my opponent could recover from his daze, I raised my Book of Messenger before my completed teleportation circle. Kirschlussel, Klassenberg. Upon my arrival at the Earth Gate, Rosemine welcomed me with dubious eyes. Based on prior experience, I suspect you're here to sabotage the race that Mestinora and Awerman set up. You can't hide anything from me. If she understood the situation as well as she claimed, we would not need to waste time with unnecessary explanations. But alas, her next words proved that she had completely missed the mark. She simply asked me to play fair, which was so foolish it made my head ache. Had she forgotten that not just her life, but the lives of everyone she knew depended on the outcome of this contest? I could not believe those words had come from a woman so emotionally fragile that a single battle had given her an incapacitating aversion to phase stones. Could this have resulted from Mestinora's interference? That's a possibility. Because we don't know what she did. We know that she ended up erasing her memory of Ferdinand from her body. So, Ferdinand had to dye her with his mana in order to get that memory back, obviously. But we don't know what else could have been, erased. As far as we know, only the memory of Ferdinand was erased. The goddess had claimed to have severed any memories that might interfere with Rosemine's love of reading. If that included negative memories, then perhaps Rosemine no longer remembered the more brutal aspects of this war? That's a possibility. But that could also be a good thing because then she wouldn't have the incapacitating fear of face stones. Or the nightmares that were waking her up from before when they were charging in to deal with Grossum. Or Gerlach, or whatever the heck his name is. It worried me what she might have forgotten, but those she cared about most were generally from the lower city. Rosemine seemed fine for now, so I elected not to say anything until the fighting was over. I did not have time to find out which people she still remembered, how many of her memories had vanished, and whether commoners without mana would even be able to restore them. That's a good question. What would they be able to do if she forgot, Benno and Lutz and her biological family, and, what would they be able to do? They wouldn't be able to do shit. Once you have finished supplying mana, return to the Royal Academy and summon your retainers. Listen to them well, then ensure you rest in the Ehrenfest dormitory. Is that understood? My instructions were meant to limit Rosemine's movements. She was somewhat naive and rarely read between the lines, so Gervasio could easily manipulate her. The last thing we needed was for her to develop unnecessary sympathy for the Lanzanavians and start behaving in unexpected ways. Is there anything for me to do other than mana replenishment? Rosemine asked. That she was even inquiring meant she was likely to follow my instructions. By sending Rosemine to the Ehrenfest dormitory, I would separate her from the bloodshed. I could not risk her following me to where I was going next. Her bleeding heart would obstruct my plans and guarantee their failure. Even with her goddess-dyed mana, Rosemine is still, Rosemine. She was so full of divinity that she was faintly shining, but her actions and expression could not have been more distinct from when she was hosting Mestinora. I was relieved to see her acting as I remembered, but also irritated that the goddess's influence lingered. It was yet unclear how much damage the possession had done to Rosemine's memories, and it frustrated me that I could not investigate immediately. Still, I would exploit the situation as much as I could. I gave Rosemine a light push on the shoulder, causing her to stumble. If even that was enough to disrupt your balance, then you will need more practice. Rosemine was too unsteady on her feet to pass as the avatar of a goddess. Her retainers would need to teach her how to dedication whirl and move with grace. I formed Book of Messinora, planning what I was going to say. The rest is a race against time. Am I going to make it? Kirschlussel. Erstared. Once back at the Royal Academy, I sprinted in the direction of the auditorium. I sent several ordinances along the way. Dunkelfelder, this is Ferdinand. At the order of the Goddess of Wisdom, do not kill any of the prisoners. I cannot predict what manner of punishment will befall those who violate her will. Inform all those in charge of prisoners in the palace and the Adultus Villa. Prince Anastasius, this is Ferdinand. Please wait in the auditorium and prepare for more combat. Ehrenfest will provide any rejuvenation potions or such that you require. Eckert, this is Ferdinand. Make sure Prince Anastasius gets what he needs. Then have Rosemine's retainers gather in the auditorium. Dunkelfelder's knights now had control of the central building. There were no black capes anywhere, only blue. Rabla had probably been defeated as well. I did not have any evidence, but the force of which Dunkelfelder and Lady Magdalena had rushed into the auditorium gave me good reason to believe I was right. Lord Ferdinand, where in the world have you been? Justice exclaimed, briskly approaching me as I arrived outside the auditorium. Contact Professor Herscher and the Knights in Ehrenfest's teleportation hall. Get them to open the dormitory at once. Tell the op to prepare a room in which Rosamund can rest when she returns, and the tea party room in preparation for a meeting with the royal family. Justice repeated my instructions back to me completely unfazed, then raised an eyebrow. Ehrenfest is busy with its own cleanup. Are you sure they will accept? Frame it as an opportunity for them to provide rear support during a decisive battle for the sovereignty. They will not refuse us then. The sun rose some time ago. Their attendants will already be at work, and an emergency message will easily reach the Archduke. Understood. Justice then took his leave, sending ordinances as he made his way to the teleportation corridor. I opened the door to the auditorium, gave Rosamund's guard knights their instructions, and then entrusted the prisoners being held in the Adulteress Villa to Strahl. Ob Dunkelfelder would oversee the palace's captives and the safety of the Royal Academy. To keep Lady Magdalena from interfering, I tasked her with looking after King Trarqual and Prince Hildebrand. As I gave the last of my orders, Prince Anastasius and his retinue of guard knights approached me. I started toward the door to meet with them, accepting rejuvenation potions and offensive magic tools from Eckert as I went. Rabla has been captured, the prince said. What more is there to be done? The capture of a small fry like Rabla does not mark the end of this war, I said. Gervasio must be imprisoned as well. Anastasius took in a sharp breath, having most likely remembered the man's book of Messinora. He's still alive? I thought you would have finished him. The goddess has ordered that no more lives be taken. We must eliminate Gervasio without killing him, and to that end we must go to the Sovereign Temple. The Sovereign Temple? Anastasius repeated, bewildered. I saw no reason to elaborate, and instead started down the hallway connected to the dormitories. Heischitz followed, acting on an order from his ob. I did not mind, as long as he did not get in my way. Prince Anastasius, I said, what is the status of the royal palace? Can we expect to pass through unmolested on our way to the Sovereign Temple? Why did you say it like that? We are under serious time constraints and must get there without delay. I guess unbothered, essentially, is what he meant to say. The palace isn't sealed, and its doors are open wide enough that Dunkelfelder's knights have been passing through with their prisoners. You'll need royal authority to access the temple, but, you could do that. He paused, and a look of realization crossed his face. Don't tell me that's why you asked me here. Is this any way to treat royalty? I sneered at him. The very idea that the royal family deserved any my respect was laughable. It was not the only reason, I said. There is so much more that I need you to do. You're acting out of line. You were before, and you definitely are now. Where do you think we are? This is a battlefield. If we do not stop Gervasio soon, you will not even be a royal anymore. By the goddess's decree, he will need to spare you, but the things he will do will make you wish you were dead. Robert's defeat had lulled Anastasius into a false sense of security. He had not even thought about Gervasio becoming the next Zent. If we are too late, we will not win, I said. Gervasio is stronger than I am. What? That can't be right. You had him pinned down atop the altar. I merely kept him from retaliating by showering him with as many kinds of attacks as I could manage. He blocked them all with ease. This and his guard knights looked at me with hard eyes. If nothing else, they finally seemed to grasp the danger we were facing. The prince grabbed a faystone and prepared to send an ordinance. Mother, this is Anastasius. I'm going to the Sovereign Temple. For lack of time, we must race through the palace on our high beasts. Please open the balcony nearest to the door. As he continued to send messages, the prince's brisk walk turned into a run. The rest of us kept his pace, and together we burst through the teleportation door to the palace. We can mount our high beasts when we reach the wider halls, Anastasius exclaimed, but until then we need to run. Up ahead, I saw several black capes working with Dunkelfelder's knights. Things here had calmed down somewhat since the rebellion was quelled. The scholars I glimpsed were likely at work rather than evacuating. Prince Anastasius, I said, Glissenmeyer, Hoschlitz, and Klassenberg are going to inquire about their country gates. Order the scholars to send you an ordinance when they do. Their country gates, he replied, slightly winded. Why? You could tell them a goddess descended upon Jürgenschmidt, but I would consider it a waste of time. Neither the scholars nor the concerned duchies would understand. We need only know when they try to contact you. There was no reason to explain precisely what was happening at the gates. I simply wanted as much information as I could get about Rosamund's and Gervasio's progress. I would doubt you if not for your disappearing act atop the altar, Anastasius said, but yes, understood. Murgator, stay in the palace and serve as our go-between with the scholars. Though the prince looked dissatisfied, he did as I advised and instructed one of his knights to stay behind. Murgator took his leave from us and sprinted in another direction, sending ordinances all the while. His contact with the scholars would keep me abreast of the gate situation, I hoped. From here, we used our high beasts. We followed the prince's guard knights as they led us down the palace's wider corridors. Ahead of us, attendants stood near a balcony with its doors wide open. We shot through, then landed on the balcony of another building and rushed inside. The royal palace had originally been built by a Zent who wished to keep their family on the throne forever. They had designed it specifically in anticipation of an attack from the Royal Academy, so there were plenty of confusing twists and turns between the Academy's teleportation door and the Sovereign Temple. First-time visitors would be lucky to make it through it all. If not for Anastasius, I would most likely have run out of time before even reaching the temple. "There's this Murgator," said the newly arrived Ordinance. "Klassenberg has just sent word. They want to know why their country gate is shining." I calculated roughly how long it would take for word to travel from Klassenberg to the Royal Palace. Gervasio had probably recovered from his wound and redrawn his teleportation circle. I wanted to reach the Sovereign Temple before Glissenmeyer sent word, else I feared the Landanavian king would finish supplying his country gate. "Prince Anastasius," I said, "you must forbid the duchies not involved in this battle from entering the Royal Academy. Let it be known that anyone who arrives without permission will promptly be deemed an enemy and cut down. Ferdinand, that King Trarqual is under the influence of Trug. A single nudge from a bad actor could drop the royal family into an even more precarious situation. I will contact Mother." Giving the prince a moment to send an ordinance, I turned to those behind me. "Heischitz, convey the same message to your Ob. Those who did not fight to save Jürgensmith have no business obstructing those of us who did." Understood. Anastasius' head guard led us downstairs, then indicated the teleportation door to the Sovereign Temple. The prince opened it while the rest of us dismounted our high beasts, and we passed through one by one. A veritable swarm of armored knights. A blue priest and 2 greys I assumed to be his attendants were guarding the door on the other side. They stared at us in shock before the blue priest cried, "What is the meaning of this?" "We have business with the Sovereign High Bishop," I said. "Where are his chambers?" "Business of what kind?" the blue priest asked. "Despite Anastasius being with us, we were not told to expect anyone, and your arrival was far too militant for—" I grabbed the man by his robes and yanked him toward me. "I asked for the location of the High Bishop's chambers. Our business is urgent, so answer now." "How dare you lay hands on a priest serving the gods?" The man's lips were evidently sealed, so I struck him with a punch and callously let him drop. Then I rounded on the 2 grey priests. They were not used to violence and pointed the way without even the slightest pause. "Thank you." "The High Bishop's chambers are on the far end of that hallway." "Thank you. That's all you had to do." We sped in the indicated direction, and without moments, alarm bells started to ring. Ehrenfest's temple had a similar warning system. The Greys must have activated their magic tools to announce our invasion. I had let them be, assuming there would not be much they could do. But this was problematic. We could not risk Emmanuel running away or hiding somewhere. I should have broken their arms and legs, I mused. "Those were priests," Anastasius cried. "Were you not once a man of the temple?" The prince was surprisingly quick to preach for a man who had once looked down on temple ceremonies and studying ancient language. Or had this faith come about from his interaction with Rosemine? No matter the case, I spared him only a glance. I did not want his troublesome ethics to get in the way. "It matters not," I said. "Nobles or priests, anyone who stands in our way must be eliminated. The same went for royals. I did not have the time to start being considerate of those who obstructed me or to scour the temple." As we continued toward the High Bishop's chambers, more priests rushed out of doors up ahead to stop us. "Halt, intruders," they exclaimed. "You shall go no further." In no time at all, the hallway was awash with blue and gray priests. Did they truly think they would be able to stop us? Their lack of exposure to violence had made them tragically naive. "Knock aside those who obstruct us and secure Emmanuel," I said. "Be quick, but do not kill anyone. I would rather we finish this before word arrives from Glissenmeyer." "Yes, my lord," Eckert replied. He sprang into action before anyone else, transforming his staff into a sword and cutting a path around the priests who stood in our way. "Move." Blood splattered against the walls, and the other priests who screamed when they saw the knight tearing through them. Many of them scattered without a second thought. "Ah, protect the High Bishop! High Bishop, the intruders!" Several priests rushed to the High Bishop's chambers, crying to be let in. We closed in on them, kicking and swinging our weapons at anyone who tried to stop us. High Bishop! High Bishop! Please open the door!" "Out of the way!" Eckert started slicing through the door, showing no restraint from the Greys clinging to it. I stepped closer and knocked them aside. "Eckert, do not damage the inside of the room." My knight twitched, then swung his sword several more times. The attack seemed considerably lighter than before, but still made short work of the door, which clattered to the floor in pieces. We passed through the now empty doorway to find only blue and gray-robed priests. Emmanuel was nowhere to be seen. Most of them panicked when they saw us, but one blue priest stood calm and still. "Where is Emmanuel?" I asked. "There," the man answered, indicating a locked door within the chambers. He explained that the room beyond it contained more objects usable only by the Sovereign High Bishop. If that is where the medals are stored, I may need to open it by force. "This door is enchanted, and Sovereign High Bishops have used it for generations. I would rather you not destroy it. No one here has the know-how to repair it, and it would cause no end of problems if the valuables inside the room are destroyed. I can simply draw Brother Emmanuel out, so please stay your hand a moment." Perhaps the priest was right, and the room really was magical. In such a case, destroying the door would make everything inside disappear. I could not say what that would mean for the medals we were seeking. "How do you intend to draw him out?" Anastasius asked. "If you remove all the other priests from these chambers, I can inform Brother Emmanuel that the intruders have been detained." This priest intrigued me. He did not falter even when speaking to a prince, and displayed a stronger will than I would expect from a temple attendant. Even more curiously than that, he did not seem loyal to Emmanuel. Curtis! Oh yeah, he's already suspicious of Emmanuel. Nice. And what is your name, I asked. Curtis. I am an attendant assigned to the High Bishop's chambers. I previously served Brother Relicion. Emmanuel must have eliminated Relicion and taken over as the High Bishop. Curtis was here only during the handover period and did not recognize Emmanuel as his new charge. See to it then. Anastasius' guards captured the other priests in the High Bishop's chambers, silenced them, then removed them from the room to prevent them from interfering. We moved out of sight of the locked door and waited as Curtis lured out our target. Brother Emmanuel, the intruders have been detained, he said. I would appreciate your input on how we should punish them. It is my duty to punish heretics, came an arrogant-sounding voice. The door opened, and out strode Emmanuel. He made it barely a few steps before I bound him with bands of light and took the key to the storeroom from his hand. Hartmut, I said, retrieve everything in this man's possession from his keys to his Bible. Do not be deceived by any fakes. I swear on my honor as the High Priest of Arenvest. Ah, that reminds me. After interrogating Blasius, justice reported that the Sovereign High Bishop cooperated with Vrabla in exchange for a rose mine being sent to the Sovereign Temple. Find out what he intended to do with her, and remember to use a magic circle. We do not want him dying on us. But of course. Leaving the Sovereign High Bishop to Hartmut, I turned to Curtis. Can anyone who holds the key access the storeroom? Is that where the medals are being stored, do you know? Yes, the medals are in here. Or in there. Blue priests are tasked with putting them in the storeroom after religious ceremonies, but those not registered to the temple cannot enter, and only the Sovereign High Bishop can use the key. I gazed down at the key. I needn't only register my mana to it, so I overwrote its previous owner and did just that. Then I opened the storeroom. That is not a problem, I said. Guide me. Curtis led me to where the medals were stored. A few sizable shelves stacked with various artifacts. Sitting atop them were large metal storage boxes just like the ones in Arenvest's temple. Finding them on my own would not have been easy. These boxes are for commoners, and those are for people with unknown affiliations, Curtis said. Brother Relicion once told me they were only to be moved at the royal family's request, but Brother Emmanuel took some out the other day. As you have a prince with you now, I would appreciate you returning them to their proper location. Curtis indicated 2 flat boxes separate from the boxes for commoners, each containing a white medal. I snatched up a nearby tool and checked to whom they belonged. One was unmistakably Gervasio's, while the other was Schiaffredo's. I'm guessing that was the predecessor. I see, the priest mused aloud. Nobles can use that magic tool to view information about the medals. I was not aware. Ah, please put the medals in this if you intend to take them with you. Curtis held out a small box into which I placed both medals. I was about to hurry out of the storeroom when I spotted the High Bishop's Bible. So the Bible is kept here as well, I said. Curtis, where is the other key? The priest went pale. That Bible is passed down from one Sovereign High Bishop to the next, and he did not want me to take the book outside the storeroom, as expected of a man in his role. I am aware. Once everything is over, I intend to return the Bible to the Sovereign High Bishop. Not that you need to believe me. Now tell me where to find the key. I do not have time to waste, so speak quickly unless you wish to experience true pain. I shall choose to believe you, Curtis replied at length. The key is here. The priest claimed to have put his faith in me, but he could not have seemed more reluctant as he handed me the key. I registered my mana to it, opened the Bible, and confirmed it was genuine. Then I exited the storeroom. Back in the High Bishop's chambers, I saw Hartmut grinning as a bloodied Emmanuel screamed in agony. Oh! What are you doing? Anastasius and his guards were doing their best not to look. The prince rushed over the moment he spotted me. Ferdinand, stop him! He is doing far more than was necessary. I grimaced. This must have been the prince's first time witnessing an interrogation. We did not have leeway to start bothering Hartmut, but alas... You will need a focused mind to perform your next task, so I suppose I must intervene. But in return for stopping Hartmut, I must ask that you keep assisting me. Have I not done enough already? I said that only as a courtesy. You will not escape me in any case. Hartmut, leave the rest for later, I said. Discuss the coronation of the next Zent, the new Zent, and the dedication whirling with Curtis. Lady Rosemine's whirling? Hartmut asked. Indeed, the divine avatar of Mestanora is going to bestow the Grigishite upon a new Zent. You will need to communicate with the Sovereign Temple if you are to oversee such a crucial ceremony. How splendid! Praise be to the gods! Hartmut stood up and prayed, kicking Emmanuel away in the process.
I would like to inform you
Oh, that's funny.
magical ringing.
Hello? Huh? Hello? Guess she didn't mean to call me. Curtis recoiled, so I gave him an encouraging nudge toward the over-eager fanatic. I also instructed Highshits to give Emmanuel a rejuvenation potion. The High Bishop's groans were too distracting, and told Eckert to perform a wash and to clean away the blood. Content that our sensitive prince had nothing more to complain about, I removed Gervasio's medal from its box. Now then, Prince Anastasius, if you would. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, an ordinance from Murgator arrived while you were in that room. Glissenmeyer inquired about their country gate. In other words, Gervasio had already begun supplying his gate. He had plenty of mana, so who knew how quickly he would finish. I made a more deliberate attempt to give Anastasius the medal. Prince Anastasius, you must destroy this medal at once. What? You want me to do it? Of course, medals belonging to the sovereignty can be destroyed only by members of the royal family. That is why I brought you. Just as only Ehrenfest's archducal family could use Ehrenfest medals, only royals could use medals belonging to the sovereignty. Had that requirement not existed, I would have broken Gervasio's immediately upon finding it. Still, the spell and magic circle for destroying medals, Anastasius muttered, searching for an excuse. He could easily have requested my assistance, but he fell silent, not even attempting to take the medal from me. Infuriated, I drew the spell and magic circle on some fey paper, which I then thrust into the prince's hands with the white medal. Gods above, just fill the circle with mana and say the worst of the spell already. The goddess has ordered that no lives be taken, so we must act while Gervasio is in Glissenmeyer. Do not hesitate to eliminate those who would steal the throne from the royal family. Anastasius recoiled and accepted the paper and medal. He moved far enough away from his guards that they would not hear the spell, then took out his staff. Prince Anastasius, I said, please make sure I can see the medal. Hide your mouth and speak quietly when reciting the spell. He glared at me, then swung his staff. Wavering black flames appeared above the magic circle. Anastasius gazed into them, raised a hand to cover his mouth, and chanted the spell as instructed. Then he tossed the white medal onto the circle. I wonder, will it burn from the outside in? Or will it crack first and then burn? One curious fact omitted from the Royal Academy's curriculum was that medals burned differently when their owner was in the same duchy. I watched closely to see how Gervasio's would change. It cracked into several pieces, then turned to gray ash and disappeared. I win, Gervasio! Ha ha! Without even thinking, I balled my hands in a tight, victorious fist. I could feel the grin spreading across my face. No matter how vast his man-up capacity was, Gervasio would not stand a chance against me now that he no longer had a staff and was trapped inside Glissenmeyer's country gate. Booyah! I win. Lord Ferdinand, can I assume we were quick enough? Eckert asked. I slowly looked around the room. Anastasius had completed the spell and now waited impatiently for my next words, as did those with him. I nodded at Eckert, then made my announcement. Gervasio's medal has been destroyed. He can no longer become the Zent. We are victorious. His plans would never come to pass. He would no longer demand that Ahrensbach's foundation be returned, that Rose might be sent to the Sovereign Temple, that his accomplices go unpunished, that Dinlandi and Leonzio be set free, or that I be sent to Lanzanov as a Faystone. This concludes our business with the Sovereign Temple, I said. Emmanuel must be detained as a criminal, but the other priests can be left to their own devices. Let us return to the auditorium and arrange a meeting with the royal family. My battle against Gervasio, my most dangerous foe, was over. But I would not secure the future I desired simply by standing around and enjoying my victory. Meeting with the royals, choosing the new Zent, having a Wehrman grant his approval, there was still much to be done, so I changed my focus from defeating my opposition to twisting the upcoming meeting in my favor. Okay, the afterword. Okay, a comfy life with my family. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this, but if you guys want to. A goddess has descended into Lady Rose's mind. Oh god, here we go with this. End of volume nonsense. Or end of volume bonuses. Okay. Ah, dang it, I can't read it. God dang it, y'all might have to read it in my stead. I'm sorry. Freaking eyes. Oh my god, that's so fucking creepy. I can't even tell what is being said. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, that's it, everybody. This volume is now done. I don't know when this one's coming out, but as soon as you guys see this, obviously, it's done. So, I will see you guys in the next one.